So do you want to start by like going through who you are, where you're from, how long you've been playing kendama, your kendama journey?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'm Elliot Patterson Dama, and which is such a goofy name because I'm not a I only made this Instagram because Gino made me. So
Okay.
after like the first like 5 months of playing kendama, Gino was like, Elliot, you need to make an Instagram and post your tricks. And I was like, dude, I haven't posted on my like real Instagram in like a lot since like high school. Like I don't do that really. Um, but then I kind of like the idea of making like a kendama scrapbook, something where I can look back and like track my progress. And I kind of loved that idea. But so that was in like I think my first post was in like May 2019. So I started grinding in January 2019. That's when I like really started. But I had like kendama come through my middle school, back in like I don't know what, like 2012 or something like that. And like I got one and I played with it and I could do like if I really grinded for it, I could do big cup spike, small cup spike, base cup spike. So I had a little bit of like something I could pull up to lighthouse. I could pull up to stilt maybe. But then I just stopped for like
No
7 years,
still trays.
no stilt trays, no stilt trays at that point. I couldn't get whirlwind. I sucked at whirlwinds. Whirlwind took me a long time to learn in 2019 when I picked it up again. Just
So
trying to learn the like two separate motions of throwing the tama up and then flipping the ken. That was like so hard for me. So I like knew what kendama was, but then I just stopped for like 7 years. And then in 2019, my little brother Oliver, who is actually like really good friends with Gino and was friends with Gino like outside of kendama, which is kind of a funny story. Uh, he brought one on a vacation to Hawaii, and I was just like playing it because Hawaii is like the best place to do kendama, just on the beach, like swing up lighthouse and whatever. And that week, I was playing his kendama a bunch, and I was like, all right, this is fun as shit. And that was I was like a junior in college at that point.
Okay. So how old were you when you first when you were in middle school, and then how old were you when you picked it up again?
So I was in eighth grade when I got one in middle school, and that would have been 12,
13.
13, age 12, 13, right? And then I picked it up again 21 years. So I guess it was 8 years that I didn't really do anything. And so, like, when I picked it up again at that, like, I had to learn whirlwind. I had to learn, like, stalls. I had never done anything like stalls or really anything. So I had to like learn everything. I had some basic cup flow, which is funny. Like people who are learning kendama don't even do that anymore. Like they just go straight to juggling the spike and shit. But I did like the cups, and I wonder if that helped me progress faster. But I'm not sure. I don't think that helped me progress faster. I think what did is I knew how to juggle beforehand. So like I knew how to juggle three objects. I knew how to juggle two objects with one hand, and that's kind of what I tell people when they're learning to juggle is like, just get two tamas. Just get two tamas and practice that because there's so much rhythm in it that like having that intuition helps a bunch.
Right. Um, were you like, did you know anything about the kendama community while you weren't playing? Like, what'd you think of kendama? Because it is a pretty unique story of you playing kendama for a tiny bit, and then like during that time, I imagine you'd be like, okay, I really want to play this. I just need to find the right time. Or like, what would you think of kendama while you
It
were not
was
playing?
it was it was like a non it just kind of exited my mind and I didn't really think about it. I had brought it again in like high school to my swim team locker room, but I kind of just like had it there and people would like fuck around with it, but I didn't really like ever do anything with it. I didn't really think of it as something that you would want to like do every day, and like progress. I thought it was just like some like fuck around thing when you're just like doing nothing. Can I swear?
Yeah,
I I'll try not I'll try not to swear.
you're good. You're good.
um
You're a little
but
late, but it's fine.
I didn't really see it as like a grinding thing. That really didn't happen until 2019. And then I was like, maybe I was looking for hobbies, at that point. because I was like busy with in high school and all through that I was a swimmer. And so like that was my life, you know, like every single day was swim practice and all of that. So I would have never like gotten back from swim practice and then done like a different hobby. I already had all my time taken up. So I think maybe in college, I was at a time in my life where I was more ready to take on something that is like a grind like that.
Yeah.
And it obviously overtook me because now I've been playing for 4 years and I've taken maybe like 10 days off.
Okay. So you started again at 21, and then how old are you now? 24? 25?
24, about to be 25 on in March. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so when you found it again, how'd you find out that this is a thing that you can do a lot of tricks with, and there's a community and you can grind?
So I knew that there was like I knew, oh yeah, you asked about the community. I knew of the community. I remember back in middle school, I watched the Colin Sander Edit 7, the one to Animal by Mike Snow, you know. Uh I remember watching that edit and I don't know how I found it or if I was like I don't think I looked at any other videos or anything. I must have just like looked up Kendama right around when it was posted or something like that. So it was just the first thing that came up. And I remember watching that and being like, thinking it was cool, but like I said, I don't know why, but it like didn't really like inspire me to like grind, which is, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have said that that edit like inspired them. And I remember watching it, but it still wasn't enough to make me like, oh, I want to be able to do all those tricks, which is kind of weird because now I like go back and watch it and I have the nostalgia. And then I'm also like, this is like such a beautiful thing. Like all these tricks are so beautiful. I want to try and emulate that. But I didn't get that back in middle school. So I don't know. Sometimes I think about if I would have stuck with it in middle school where I'd be now, I'd be like a lot better than I am.
Yeah, I have the same thing because I didn't start until I was 21 either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
started at
And how old are
21,
you now?
28.
Okay.
So I'm older than you. So I
Okay.
started in 2015.
Okay. Yeah, you've been playing for longer than me.
Yeah, but I wish I actually just found out that there was as you see the newest Dama Nerds with Colin Sander.
Mm-mm. Oh, that would be
Okay,
interesting to listen to.
really, really cool. Yeah, they're talking about how Colin found out because he's the grandfather of Kendama. So how he found out about Kendama, and it was through watching a ski video. And when I never was skiing and when I was young, but there was one ski video that was made by the same dude who showed, and this dude just threw Kendama in his edit in one of his ski edits, and that
Yeah.
introduced Kendama to Colin Sanders. I think like Alex from Terra, like a bunch
Hmm.
of people who started playing them. And so if I had only watched that other edit, I think like, oh, I would have started grinding. That'd have been like really
Yeah,
good.
you would have been one of the OGs.
Yeah. But yeah.
That's funny that it
So
started with skiing because was Kendama USA even a thing at that point? Like when was that
no.
company founded? Or
Yeah, Colin talks about it, but it was I mean Colin started in 2008 and then I think Konami USA 2010, 2011 maybe.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
2012 is when they had their big Japan tour, and they had Jake Weens and Alex, uh,
Hmm.
and then Colin Sander and Haley Bischoff. Yeah, and Zach
Yeah.
Yord. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
so
so far after that. Like it's so weird because I have like a snip like I remember that Colin Sander edit, but then I just like disappeared from it and I didn't hear anything about it until 2019. And then when I started looking at things in 2019, because then I was like older and I knew like, you know, I knew what social media was at that point. Like I knew how this stuff worked. And so I knew I was a skateboarder before I played kendama. So like I knew about like Insta clips on skating and edit and skate edits and stuff like that. So that all translates to kendama, you know, same ideas.
right.
So as soon as I got back, then I started looking up videos and I saw like DUSD and Nick Gallagher, obviously, and like seeing the juggling, and that really like blew my mind because that was especially like missing that gap where that evolution happened made me like, well, this is like nothing like what I remember. Like these people are putting lines together. I remember seeing one line where they did like a late trip sling in the line and then like kept on juggling, juggling into lighthouse flip, whatever, blah blah blah. And I was just like, wow, like what is going on here? This is like incredible. I had no idea that anything like this would ever be possible with a kendama. Like I thought it was just cups, you know, like
Yeah. Okay, so once you saw that, you saw the possibility of kendama, and then that's when you started grinding.
and that is so the Colin Sander edit didn't inspire me to start back in middle school, but when I started in 2019 and I saw those videos, that really, and because I wasn't swimming anymore, that really gripped me, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to learn how to do that because that looks like fun.
Yeah.
And so then I
Um,
like started to learn how to juggle. I remember my first grind tricks were whirlwind and airplane 1.5 swap spike. That was like, because I was like, okay, I should be able to, and this theme is probably going to come up a lot in this podcast. I looked at those two tricks and I was like, I should be able to get these every single time, no
mm,
matter what. I should be able to manipulate the tama perfectly and flip it and catch it perfectly every time, no excuses. And
mm.
so those two tricks I remember, because with the airplane swap spike, I was like, initially I was just like tossing the tama up. And then I realized like, okay, well, I can flip the Ken and then give this a very specific toss. So the tama comes right around and then I should be able to spike it every single time. So I remember those two tricks I really grinded before I started like branching out. Because that's kind of a big thing with my kendama like philosophy is don't overstep your ability. Work on what you've got right now, get it perfect, and then move on. And I think that that like helps you progress so much faster.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. So maybe you can expand on that, because I think maybe that's kind of the opposite of the philosophy of going for bangers where you get lucky and then you post, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's why I think that that and the fact that I didn't make a kendama Instagram until Gino forced me to. I think those two are related because I started kendama absent of the, you know, pressure to like land a really crazy trick for other people. Like I was just like, okay, here are a couple satisfying tricks and I want to be able to do them every time because they're satisfying and they're fun to land. There was no like for the first 6 months of my kendama playing, there was no like, oh, I want to get this trick because it would be cool and I think that other people would think it would be cool. Like there was the first 6 months of my kendama play was completely absent of that.
And then what happened? Because it seems like you're impressing a lot of people nowadays.
Well, that's something I struggle with. Definitely, still to this day, I struggle with social media because I have never really been a social media guy. I kept Instagram because I think it's a really cool like scrapbook. Like I said, like I'm talking about like my main Instagram. I kept my like my personal Instagram because I love going back and seeing those pictures. But like I deleted all my like Snapchat, Twitter. I deleted all that back in high school because that is just it's just not very me, you know? And
Yeah.
so I still struggle with that a lot with doing kendama and wanting to film these tricks. And my second most recent post, the Nick Gallagher trick, the stilt flip, juggle back to stilt, insta stilt, dub, throw back to stilt, insta dub, trip. Um, I had that was my most recent like conundrum with kendama because I tried
Crisis.
that trick. Yeah, crisis, like a philosophical crisis because I tried that trick over winter break. And with that trick, I could get to the two so often, but the three was just so hard that I couldn't finish it. But because I was so close, I was just like so desperately wanted to get lucky and just film it. And so I filmed it over and over and over again, and I never got it. And I really like, if you talk to anyone in the 608, I do not like filming. Like filming is not why I do kendama. I play off camera almost all the time. And if I film a trick, I set up the camera for 15 to 20 minutes. And if I go past that, I cut it off. And I never film for more than that because it just is too frustrating. And then I lose why I'm doing kendama. Then I start to veer into the I want to get this clip so I can impress other people. And I don't want to do that. Like it's really hard not to fall into that, but I have to like try and remind myself constantly to not fall into that. And
Okay,
so
that's
this
super
one, two,
cool.
three stilt trick, I was just like grinding it, and I couldn't get it, and it made me mad. And I don't really get mad at kendama anymore because I don't have a string, and so there's no reason to get mad. And
So
so
true.
angry, and I had to like like meditate on the idea of like, okay, I need to stop trying to film this trick, and I need to just practice the three until I can get it good, and then I'm gonna put it together. And then when I ended up filming it, it took me 10 minutes. And so it was like just proof to me that it is not worth it to try and get lucky and get that trick. For me personally, obviously, this is just for me. Obviously, anyone can play however they want. But like for me personally, it's not worth it to try and get lucky and get that clip to post that insta banger. It's way more satisfying to practice the parts, like I said, practice the fundamentals, and then eventually put it together when you know you can get it within 15 minutes. And that
Mhm.
is like my number one philosophy with filming. And it's hard though. Like it's hard to maintain. Like it's hard. And sometimes, well, not since that one, but before that, I told myself to have filming limits, but I made it like 25 minutes. But that was too much because then by the time it was 25, then I was like, oh, okay, well, let's just make it 30. And then after 30 minutes, I was like, oh, well, I'm so close. Just let me get a couple more attempts, like everyone does. And so it's taken me a long time to figure out how to film like in a mentally healthy way. It's because I don't go well with filming. It doesn't make I don't like how it makes me feel about my kendama.
And what is that? What is it? How does it make you feel?
Angry, like I feel like should be getting this. Like every time you film a trick, subconsciously it's because you feel like you should be able to do it, right? And so then if you don't get it, then you get that disappointment of, oh well, I'm not good enough, I suck. And I really don't like I get that after I film. Like I'm like, oh God, I suck. Why can I not get this trick? And I really don't like that. Like with kendama, kendama is hard. One thing, like it's hard to land tricks on a kendama. Like it's a fluke thing, Um, and I just yeah, I mean, if it makes me angry, like I don't want to be doing something that makes me angry, Like it's okay if it has the potential to make you angry because then you care about it, Like if it couldn't make me angry, then it's like if you never fight with your partner or whatever, they say that's a bad thing. And it's like, yeah, because if you don't have a fight, then do you even really care what they think, And so like I care about kendama, and so it can make me mad, and I accept that, but I would rather it not, and I'm gonna take all the steps to make it so that it doesn't make me mad. Obviously, I have taken the extreme step of taking the string off forever.
This is funny the way that you put it, removing the string forever.
Fuck that shit. So dumb.
So, but people would say, and I'm gonna say people would say, because maybe this is a little bit of me, but it's definitely a lot of the community, that there could be potential to master the string where your desire to be consistent with the trick doesn't only limit itself to the ken and the tama, it also can extend to the string where you can hit triple ken flip, late ken flip to bird, and just know where the string would be every time.
hmm There is a level to which you can master the string, almost certainly. We all know that because when we're trying new hard tricks and we're panicking and we're not nice and smooth like Gallagher level, you feel the string getting tangled more. So I learned early on for sure that there are ways to mitigate the string, being relaxed, smooth, and maybe even to the technicality of moving your hand a specific way on certain tricks. Um, but there's too much that you can't control. So I wonder if you'll agree with this. I found that with perfect relaxation, no panicking, the string gets in the way three or four out of every 10 attempts. That's kind of my diagnosis. Is there's a way where you can get lucky, you know, like you can flip heads 5 times in a row. There's a way you can get lucky where you can have 15 attempts in a row where the string doesn't get in the way, maybe not on a humid day. um, but ultimately it's like 3 to 4 out of every 10 attempts. And that's just too much for me. That's just too many. That's just too much. That's too big of a chunk of the tries that are just for nothing.
Okay. Yes. Um,
And I mean, Zach said that too when you guys talked. He was like, "No one can perfectly control the string."
yeah. I asked him that on purpose, and yeah, I don't know. I don't really know if he realized that it was a bit of a contradiction. Obviously, he has other reasons to not play stringless. And again, you're not especially making anybody play any certain way of kendama. But I feel like general hesitations, and not just to single out Zach, but general hesitations to play stringless kendama are all relatively similar. Everyone kind of has the same ideas and arguments.
Oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah. I've talked
but
to a lot of people about this.
yeah, but especially what you were just saying about what were you just saying? Um, oh, not
Out
mastering
of
the
every,
string.
yeah.
Like if you can admit that you can't master the string, then I feel like if you do value consistency, then that's
Hmm.
more of an argument to play stringless.
Hmm. Well, and to Steelman the other side too, there is the one thing that's always brought up. I'm sure we'll probably touch on all of the arguments because I would love to touch on all of the arguments on both sides and give my opinion of them because obviously I try to be understanding of every side, and so I really like when I listen to people argue why you should keep the string on. Like I really listen, you know, like I want to know exactly why. And one of the biggest ones is the idea of challenge. And well, you want it to be a challenge, don't you? And a lot of this stuff is sort of like it's really complicated, like philosophical stuff where you're like, okay, well, how would you define challenge, right? Because there's one type of challenge where it's a difficult thing, but with practice, you can overcome it. And then there's another type of challenge where it's just hard to do it for reasons that are out of your control. So like the way I would rock climb, and I thought of this analogy. I was like, would you rather finish a rock climb that was really hard and you had to work on it for a while to get up the strength and learn the exact moves to do it? Or would you rather complete a decently hard rock climb where 3 out of every 10 attempts, someone just hooks a rope to you and pulls you off the wall out of no control of your own? It's like, which one would be more satisfying to finish the one where you know that every single part of your practice went into it, or one where you just so happen to get lucky that you didn't get the attempt where something out of your control ruins it? And so there's different types of challenge. And whenever people bring that up, I always say, like, well, I don't want that challenge where there's nothing I can do about it. If I can set it up so that I get the challenge where there's something I can do about it, that's going to be way more satisfying for me personally.
Yeah, yeah. I I agree. I think I'm trying to think of what people would say, and they'd probably say that well, that random person pulling the rope isn't necessarily out of your control. But then that kind of goes back to what you were talking about, how if you wanted to do a trick 10 times in a row, you should be able to, but
Mm-hmm.
most likely you can't. I mean, a good example is the form video that I did. The three tap, late three tap. Most
Mm-hmm.
of those players without a string, like these are probably the best players to look at. Because I
Yeah.
didn't do any Japanese players, I don't think, but these are top players.
Mm-hmm.
And only Edwin did it first try. But these are players that know the string more than anybody, especially for this trick, because this is a very new gen trick that they've done a million times for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
Lots of
But
juggles, lots of movement with your hands back and
yeah,
forth.
and nobody got it for only one. Edwin got it first try, But most players took
He's a beast.
between,
He's the goat.
yeah, he's the goat.
He's
But most
literally like
players took like between maybe a minute to 10 minutes to do it. And it's like, why? Like
Mhm.
if it's not just that this trick is that hard, because it is hard for most people, but not for them. It has to do with the string, I think. And
Mhm.
I
Whereas if
think,
they had no string, they could do that trick 3 times in a row first try.
yeah,
And
I
that to me
think
is
so.
just so much more satisfying.
Yeah. And so, I think maybe part of your reasons for playing stringless, and your, I don't want to say promotion, but like your defense of it, is that the way that you think about kendama. Like I really like the way that you thought about posting, and it goes beyond social media. It goes beyond of how you look at kendama, how you look at your abilities, your skills,
Mhm.
life, where you don't want to get lucky with anything. You want to be able to have the skills to do it, and then you share a post that reflects your skills that you
Mhm.
worked hard to get to.
Right. Like ultimately like my end goal with kendama is not to have this like rap sheet of crazy bangers that I've landed. It's to be 30 alone in the woods, shirtless, barefoot, just doing kendama and just like landing everything, you know? Like that is my pinnacle. Like having this Ken and Tama and just being able to just do crazy stuff with it every time. And when no one's watching, like I don't care if anyone's watching, you know, like I just want to be able to do it for myself. You know, like
The
that's
six
another
pack with
thing
the
is
shirtless though, like people, I mean, they'd appreciate that if they were watching.
I yeah, I get hot so easily. I always
So,
have. And so I'm just like I'll be like here in Wisconsin, I'll be shirtless at like 45 if it's like just
yeah.
the right you know conditions. If I'm grinding 10 taps, like there's no temperature where I'll keep the shirt on, you know. At the
Um,
at Battle at the Border on the Thursday jam, it was like freezing cold and everyone was like everyone was just like shivering, kind of like hanging out and talking. And I was there sessioning with Andre Goya, and we were just sessioning taps. And we were like, I was like, I don't know about you guys, I'm sweating right now.
yeah. Do you feel like the shirt is like the string where it kind of can get in your way? Sort of
So
like a
that
leading
is
question, but I kind of have some like,
that's why I said that a lot of these stuff are like deep philosophical questions because kendama sort of like reflects what's in ourselves, you know. And I really do think that taking out the string and being shirtless are sort of related because I'm a very like a purist, you know. Like when I do kendama, which a lot of people would say that kendama without a string isn't pure. Kendama with a string is pure, but I we can get into that later. But I don't like having. I would never get a tattoo. I like my body how it is, you know. Like I'm just like a human out here. Like I don't want anything like artificial about it, you know. And so when I go out and do kendama, I'm very like in nature, you know. Like I'm like okay, I'm like a primal human being out here, you know, barefoot, shirtless, like just in my
playing.
running shorts, just playing kendama, you know. And yeah, to me, the string feels so much more unnatural than just the Ken and the Tama. It
Yeah.
seems so much more artificial.
What about the argument for tradition and that this toy came with a string, respecting the game of how it's always been played and how it came, and
Mm-hmm.
that argument?
Right. Well, that's another definitional issue I feel because there's obviously Madi Melt Suleb performer team, you know, his Instagram, where they do these oversized kendamas with no string, you know, multiple kens or multiple tamas type thing. And I sort of I try to consider what I do as like a midpoint between that, where you have like the kendama with a string, World Cup, like these are the regulations. This is what we train to. This is what we standardize competitions on. And then there's the multiple kens, multiple tamas, oversized or not, juggling, totally free flow, freestyle, you know. And then I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where like I know that I am not I mean I still do subconsciously, but I try as hard as I can not to compare myself to other people. Like I just did 1, 2, 3 stilt tray, but that is not even on the same domain as Nick's 1, 2, 3 stilt tray. Like, and I say that, and I may be lying a little bit to myself on the inside, but I know on the outside I'm trying to make sure I'm not comparing myself to those other people, because Stringless it's in this kind of halfway category where it's a different thing. It's not even close to the standard thing. I mean, Stringless is so much easier. You can do so many more things when you go stringless, and I will always acknowledge that. And that is why I try not to compare myself to other people. Like when I see other people land banger tricks, like I look at that and I don't think like, that's soft. Like I could land that. Like I think, I don't even think about myself. I think like, oh wow, if I think back to when I had a string and I played kendama, like wow, I'm not even close to landing that. Like that trick is incredible, but for like a different reason than why my tricks are difficult. Like they're two totally different things. You can't compare them. And I try to emphasize that whenever I talk to people, is like I don't think I don't think I'm better than you. Like I'm just different. It's.
Yeah. What about the like back to the traditional argument? I think under that is like, oh, it would be like taking off a cup.
Yeah. So I thought hard about that analogy, and I mean, it's easy to make a bunch of analogies, and they may be accurate or they may not be, or they may be partially accurate. And here's the one I thought of is on the because taking off a cup. That's what Zach said in your podcast with him. And I was thinking of soccer, and I was like, okay, so that's like implying that taking off the string is like taking out the soccer ball or taking out the goals or something like that. Whereas I think it's more accurate to say that taking off the string is more like playing soccer with cleats instead of playing it barefoot. So the motions are all still the same. The motions, the balance points, the technicality, it's all still the same. It's just when you take the string off or when you put the cleats on, you just have that much more control in your movements.
Mm.
But like I said, it's still all the same motions. So that is, and the motions, I think, and the motions and the balances, I think that is the biggest part of it. That is way bigger than the string. So like another argument that I hear people say is, and I understand this, is, well, kendama is an integral, or the string is an integral part of kendama. So I hear that and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. But then when people are doing a trick and the string gets in the way, they say just that. They say, oh, well, the string got in the way. Well, it's like, well, the string got in the way of what? Of your kendama trick? So then subconsciously you're implying that that the kendama trick that you're trying to go for is ken and tama. And obviously there's like Jack Gilligoon pinch tricks, Pinchy William, and they're just nuts. And we'll just put that off to the side. That is a whole different type of kendama. I love that. I love watching it. I think it's super, super
But they're
cool.
doing
I think they
string
look
tricks, right?
I think they look beautiful, but we're not talking about that, because the fact is that 95% of kendama tricks that people do are ken and tama. And they know that when they say, oh, the string got in the way, well, the string got in the way of the trick you're trying to do, which doesn't involve the string in any way in terms of the balances or the motions that you're doing. So it's another definitional issue of, well, integral in what way, like integral for the tradition's sake, in that this is how it's always been, or integral in that what you're picturing in your mind involves the string. Like, because integral, like I would say, like a microchip is integral to a computer, but like having a case around your computer, that's not integral to having a computer. So like when I see people say, oh, like it's integral to kendama, but then they do tricks that don't involve the string at all, I'm like, well, that doesn't seem very integral to your kendama play. It seems like it's on there because back when people sucked at kendama, they didn't want to drop it over and over again. But
Mm.
now we can juggle with the kendama, so the game has changed. We don't have to worry about dropping it anymore. We're all like skillful enough that we can keep this ken and tama up. We don't have to worry about dropping it anymore because people are crazy now.
All
And
right,
we
Elliot.
juggle with it. I mean, that was like a big like a big turning point in kendama, is when we figured out how to juggle.
Yeah.
So
Do you see more people playing stringless in the future? Do you think this is the future of kendama?
yeah, you know what's funny is you asked Zach that, and I didn't even think about that. Like I have not even, for some reason, I mean, maybe it's part of my philosophy, like I said, where like my ideal end point of kendama is, or my ideal future of kendama is not having a whole rap sheet of bangers that I can list off that I've landed, but it's just like being alone playing in the woods. Like I actually, when I do stringless, like I like to talk to people about maybe them trying stringless. But I for some reason you said that, and I was like, wow, I did not even like think of that as an idea that more people would be playing stringless and then it would be becoming the standard. Like I didn't even think about that. But I mean, after you said that and I was thinking about it, I was like, oh yes, yes. Imagine if that was the future of kendama. I mean, because we think that kendama is like going crazy right now in terms of the bangers that people can land now. Just think if the Gallaghers played stringless, or if Takuya played stringless. Oh my
But
gosh.
Zach
Like,
was saying like there's no limit then. People would be doing 30 like Ken flips.
well, that's the other thing is when yeah, see, stringless is interesting because how you play stringless can really vary. So like I played a stringless game of Ken against Joe Nelson when I went and hung out with Joe and Brody and Chris. And it was so funny because he was like, all right, fuck this, I'm not playing with a string. And I was like, yeah, do it, take it off. I don't, yeah, I encourage this. And he took it off, and the first trick he went for in our game of Ken was 10 single taps, jug, 10 late Kens, jug, 10 single taps, jug, spike. And I was like, that's so funny that he picks up the stringless and he does that, because that's what most people would do. When Madi came over at the Parthenon Jam and we were seshing stringless together, uh that's kind of what he did too, is he was doing like consecutive late Kens and stuff like that. Because most people would think like all that like stringless is just silly, you take it off and you can just do stuff like that. Well, yeah, you can, but I don't do stuff like that. Like I don't just do when I'm seshing, I don't just do 30 single taps. Like I still go for technical tricks. So that's where I think that when people first start doing stringless, it's like totally different than after you start to get used to it. So like when you first pick up and play stringless, you're really tempted to hold your hands out and like be like this and constantly be ready to catch it, and you're just going to do like insta lighthouse flips over and over and over again, a bunch of late Ken flips, because people are like, like even Zach said, he was like, oh well, it's you can, and it still requires technique, like he acknowledged, you can just throw the tama up and whip like a fat late Ken, and everyone thinks like that. Have you ever seen me do that? Like I don't do that. So I you can do just like crazy, like ridiculous stuff like that, but I still would rather do 3-2-1 tap jug wing than 10 consecutive late Kens. So you can pick up the stringless and you can just you can play it so many different ways that, like I said, like people think like, oh well, it's crazy. You can just do like a bunch of consecutive late Kens and it's just silly. And that I would say, sort of is borderline silly. But I don't do that, Like I pick it up and I still try and do tech things. I still try and do spike taps. I still try and hone in my juggle stalls to try and get those perfect. So there's so many different ways that you can even play stringless that I think that if people were to like, obviously the first trick that Tiblex would do if he started playing stringless is like airplane 1.5 swap late 8 Ken jug late 8 Ken throw back to airplane. But then after you play with it a while, you realize that just like with a string, that stuff is sort of boring and you were more gravitated towards the more technical things, even with stringless. So like even though I play stringless and I could just do these like long crazy lines, I still try and go for like tech fast hand stuff, and things like that.
Um, do you think it's because I graduated when I do stringless, when I first started doing stringless, I was doing as many late Kens as possible. So I did exactly what Zach
Everyone does. That's what everyone does. That's what
and I
because you're
wanted
like,
to
oh, I'm
throw,
finally free. Like I don't
yeah,
have to worry about it anymore.
but I think it's maybe because my first reaction to not having a string is that like, okay, I can like my first instinct is like what got the string in the way the most? It was when I wanted to do 10 late Ken flips in a row, when I wanted to do like 10 late Ken. Um, are people underestimating the amount of times the string gets in the way?
Mm,
Or they underestimate, like, even if I'm going through 3-2-1 tap, jug, wing, they don't think about when the string gets in the way, right? They just miss, they miss.
mm-hmm,
Versus if you're going for 10 like Ken, it's like obviously I can't throw the tama that high with
mm-hmm.
my 12 finger string.
Yeah. Right. So like when that's kind of what I was saying, like when people first pick up stringless, they have this like, oh, I'm free. And like you said, it's like, okay, what tricks was the string getting in the way the most for? And then they gravitate towards those. So that's why I think if stringless is ever going to become the future, which is where this started, people are going to have to play stringless longer than just one session. They're going to have to play stringless and get through that sort of like honeymoon phase of like, oh, I can do anything now. I can just keep on going. And then they have to go back to their tricks that they're trying. And then they'll realize that like when you're stringless, it doesn't mean that you have to do the things where the string was always getting in the way. You can just play regular like how you normally would, but now you don't have to deal with the string getting in the way of your favorite tricks. So
Yeah.
like inward lunars, like I never did inward lunars because the string is on the other side and it just that much more tangle just like really frustrated me. And now when you do stringless, like inward lunars are so much fun. Like they're such a fun trick. And especially with stringless. So I think people will like initially go stringless and do like the big long lines. But then if they were to just keep on doing that and then go back to doing what they love, I just think that they would find so much more love for the tricks that they do.
I think a good motivation to get people to play stringless, not that you're necessarily looking for that, but if back to what I was saying, like if the next session that you play, just be aware of how often the string is getting in the way. I think if people
Mm-hmm.
did that,
Mm-hmm.
then very quickly they just be like, you know,
Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's the thing too. Actually, I wanted to say one thing about the doing like 10 consecutive late Kens because since I've been doing stringless, the topic of possibly doing stringless in freestyle has started to grow. And like you said, you're hosting an event where you're going to allow stringless freestyle. And I like that idea and I like it more than I think other people would, more traditionalists would, because I think the traditionalists would think, oh, well, I'm going to use a string and I'm going to get messed up by the string a couple times on stage. And then this guy is going to come up and he's going to do 10 consecutive late Kens and he's just going to be able to, not get messed up by the string. And he's going to be able to land so many more things than me. Well, as long as the judges realize that one person is playing with a string and one person is playing stringless, judge accordingly, Like if I was going up against a Gallagher and he goes and they land fucking crazy stilt flips and juggle stalls and, trip J's like they're just so good at. And then I went up there, but the string got in the way a couple times and they messed up. If I get in there and I do 10 single taps, jug, 10 late Kens, jug, 10 single taps, like that's a stupid trick on stringless. Like
Yeah.
anyone who can do like single taps and late Kens, anyone can do that trick. So it's like if I'm going up there stringless and everyone knows I'm stringless, like I'm gonna have to do something next level if I want to beat someone who has a string.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna have to do like 10 tap, jug bird, throw, 10 tap, like jug spike fast hand. Like I would have to do crazy tricks to beat less crazy tricks with a string. So that's something interesting. Like I think if I did freestyle at a next event, I'd probably go up there with stringless and just say like, you know what, like it's freestyle. Everyone has their own style and judge me accordingly. And I fully accept that if you land a couple tricks with a string and I land everything with stringless, I could very well still lose, like I could still lose because with stringless it's just that much easier. So I've
Yeah.
thought about that too.
Yeah. But it also could be kind of like two different games, like
Exactly. So there's a lot more thinking to be done on
yeah.
that front for me. I'm in no way like, oh, what? Why wouldn't you allow stringless? Like that's stupid. Like I'm so far away from that. But I at least thought about like judging it accordingly and like, oh, there might be something there. Probably not, but I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I would hate to go up on and compete freestyle with a string. Like obviously me personally because I hate playing with a string in general. But like I would feel so much more like I could express my style if I was stringless, and that's exactly what freestyle is.
A few things I want to talk to you about. I need to write some stuff down. Um, so it's super annoying to drop when you play stringless. You said you got used to it, right? I think people with their first session of playing stringless, they're gonna drop it, and it's gonna make a loud noise, and then their wife slash mom will yell at them. And then they'll like, okay, fine, you know.
Yeah, don't drop it. Get good, kid.
But like, what? Yeah, what would you say to that? Do you get used to it after a while? I mean,
Well, that's another thing is like I heard Zach say that he thought it was silly to see me like chasing my tama around at Battle of the Border, and that for sure happened like like several times, like
you
certainly
see a tongue
I
rolling
yeah,
by, and then you
yeah,
chase
where
it. Yeah,
like and then I was like, oh, well, help, and then like
yeah,
throw it
they
back or
toss it
whatever,
back.
which is like a funny interaction in itself. That does happen, but like you watch me, like I probably drop it less than the amount of times that the string gets in the way. Like
Mm,
I drop it way less than people think. Like I catch it, and
yeah,
like Zach said, he noticed that when I play, I don't even keep my hands out anymore. Like I especially when I'm filming, I try to make sure that I don't like reach out because I think that ruins the aesthetic of the string or of the trick. But when I play, like I don't know, I don't drop it that much. Like I catch it pretty consistently. And if I do drop it, I've sort of like structured my mind to be like, okay, when I do drop it, I go like, take a deep breath, you know, do a little stretch, and like I say, like, okay, this is me forcing myself to take a little break, you know, which everyone needs when you're playing kendama for an hour and a half, 2 hours. You need a second to like. I used to do that with. I used that same trick when like a huge gust of wind would come in when I played with a string. Like I would say, like, okay, if I feel a huge gust of wind, don't try a trick. Just stop for a second and just like
Yeah.
relax, take a deep breath, and sort of reset. So I don't drop it that much, you know. Like, I'm not saying I don't miss. Like, I'm just saying like I catch it.
Okay.
Like it fall. Like I'm not saying I never miss, but I catch. I'm able to catch it pretty often. Like especially when I'm doing taps. Like which is a huge part of my play style. I'm tapping it, and it's like it's right here.
Yeah.
And so if I mess up, I can just like I can almost catch it one hand. Like I film a lot of clips selfie mode, you know? And like even
Yeah.
when I'm playing selfie mode, I don't get mad at the amount of times I drop it. Even when I'm freaking playing with holding my phone like this, I'm still able to catch it like that because you have to get used to it. Like, and obviously it wasn't like that for the first week when I played Stringless, but after a while, you're able to catch it a lot. And so I think that's another thing that people will have to realize if Stringless is gonna be the future, they'll have to realize that like you're gonna have to go a couple days getting used to it and learning when to catch it, and because you can kind of tell in your attempts when it's about to fail, especially when you don't have the string, because you have so much more control over your kendama that you can tell when it's about to fail, you know. So dropping, like it's an interesting argument because yeah, dropping it would be annoying a bunch, and definitely I wouldn't recommend Stringless for beginner players, beginner or maybe even advanced or amateur players, like in terms of like the open rankings I'm trying to think about, you know. But like once you get to pro and you are able to juggle it really consistently and you have this like next level understanding of how your tricks are going while you're doing them, you know, you can catch it pretty dang often. And if you don't catch it, like I said, just take a breather, you know, stretch a little bit and take some solace in the fact that you get to take a couple seconds to just reset.
I imagine that playing with a string could be valuable when you're going for a brand new trick, because if you're going for a consistency trick, let's say like, yeah, 3, 2, 1 tap juggle bird. And so you have it down, you're trying to get it a lot of times in a row, you're trying to get the jug to bird down. Stringless would be nice because like you're landing bird or you're landing really close and you're just working on that last toss. Maybe if you miss the tap, it's fine. But if you're doing that for the first time, right, and you're missing the tap often, um, I feel like you're more likely to drop it. So do you see value in playing with the string in regards to that? So you maybe get more attempts in a sesh?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, that if you don't have the motions down, you'll be less likely to catch it. So yeah, I think absolutely. If you're learning a trick, so that's one thing I say to people is like I have never said to anyone like, "Oh, you should just take the string off and never play with a string again." But I thought, you know what? Maybe stringless isn't the future, but maybe going to the sesh with one strung setup and one unstrung setup, you know, maybe that's the future because then you can, you know, like you said, when you're learning a trick, you can, well, yeah, and maybe it's different for other people. Now, what I just thought of is I had never ever done spike taps really, and I've been grinding spike taps lately, but I haven't been like noticing that I've been dropping it especially more. But that's like I said with taps too. Taps are easy to catch.
What about like a
So
triple Ken flip, late triple Ken? You're either going to spike it or you're going to miss it. I feel like the tama is going to fall off frequently.
if you're trying to do
Um,
late trip Ken straight to spike,
yeah,
yeah, that's one where you drop it pretty often. There's so much nuance to this, you know, that like
yeah,
there's certain tricks that I just wouldn't do with a string. Like I said, like doing like tap swap late Kens, you know, with no jug in between. Those are really hard with a string. The string gets in the way a ton.
Yeah,
But like and inward lunars, like I really did not enjoy doing inward lunars with a string, but I don't enjoy doing trip J's without a string, you know? Trip
yeah.
J is one of those tricks where if I miss, on the
Mm,
floor now. So I never do trip J's. I land triple stilt. I probably have triple stilt flip 3 times more consistent than trip J's. I've actually,
yeah.
I've like done the like how many times can I get trip J out of 10 and how many times can I do trip stilt out of 10? And I can do trip stilt 3 times more often than trip J. And it's just
Well,
because
it's
I don't practice
conveniently
trip
way
J.
more impressive. So good for you.
well, it's just about what you practice though, right?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
never do trip J's, and stilts are a huge part of what I do. I fucking love stilts, and so it's just about what you practice. But for some reason, when you're doing stilts and you're trying to catch it like that, you're ready to catch it, and I'm not going to drop it. Whereas with trip J, I'm usually trying to do an insta out afterwards, and so if I go, so it's coming back in, and I go for the insta, but it misses, it just falls on the ground, and
annoying.
then I'll get annoyed by that, and I don't do trip J's. So like
Yeah,
dropping it is annoying, but I don't drop it enough for it to be annoying
yeah.
enough to put a string back on, right? Like it's like what's more annoying, dropping it or the string getting in the way 3 or 4 out of every 10 attempts? For me, the string is way more annoying. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just because I do tricks that are more conducive to being able to catch it.
And
You know, it's
I can imagine people are saying, well, you're only learning tricks, certain tricks, because you're playing stringless, you're ignoring other tricks. But it's a really easy argument to say, if we're holding these two things the same level, what tricks are you not doing with a string? Because it's
mm-hmm,
annoying with a string, right?
mm-hmm. Well, and that is, I've thought about that recently too. Is like, oh well, I'm not. I feel because with stringless, it's obviously the number one reason for why I'm stringless is consistency. And so the very like foundation of why I go stringless is not conducive to learning new tricks. It's to hone in the tricks that I do have. So I did think about it recently with my spike taps, where I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn a new trick, you know. I'm gonna learn a new trick and get consistent at a new trick. And I wanted to make sure, and I think I did that in this past winter in my all my fitness center clips that I've been posting, is I'm trying to do like shorter tech tricks, you know. Like
Yeah.
I'm not obviously my last 2 tricks were just like, you know, boring, like 1 2 3 tricks. My last 3 because my third to last post was the 4 3 2 1 spike taps and reg taps. Um, but before that, I learned the spike hippie taps. Um, I did a line with that, and then I did a line with the like spike taps and then throw to airplane and out like cool symmetrical lines like that. So that is a good point though, and that's something that I probably do have to keep in mind is, you know, I'm doing stringless, but there's a lot of joy in learning new things, and I probably have to try a little bit harder to learn new things when I'm stringless, because like you said, when you got a string on, you can really just fuck around, you know, and you can really just like try goofy stuff, and it doesn't matter because you're not gonna have to keep on picking it up. So that's something that I'll definitely try and keep in mind. Maybe I'll learn a new trick coming up soon.
Um, did your Kenda get destroyed, or do you play on turf, or do you
Well,
chip base cups?
I play in that fitness center. I actually don't chip base cups because I don't do insta lighthouse flips. And I think that's a big
But you tap.
misconception. I think that's a big misconception is that taps cause base cup chips. I don't think they do. I think that when you only do taps and like, because I'm saying like when I say I don't do insta lighthouse flips, I mean I never do insta lighthouse flips. Like
Okay.
I can maybe do 3 consecutive insta lighthouse flips. Like
Okay.
Takuya can do like 50. Gino
Yeah.
can do like 20, you know?
Yeah.
Like I've seen Nick can do 10 and then cloud bounce and then another 10. Like I can maybe do 3. That is a trick that I never, ever, ever do. And I think that's a big reason why my kendamas never chip. Because when you, so here, let me show you how my kendamas chip. This is how chip on taps. So there are no big like chips that come off, but there will be little like flakes that come off, you know? And then this is one that I seshed really, really hard,
Holy
obviously.
shit, dude! That
It
I've
doesn't
never
even
seen a kid that looks like that before.
it doesn't even stand up anymore. This is what happens when you don't do any insta lighthouse flips. You've never seen a Ken like this because there's no other player like that.
Yeah.
Everyone does insta lighthouse flips. So there was never a blunt force going up against that outward. You know, the taps are inward, and the force, the wood
Yeah.
takes that, and then it starts to chip off a little bit. And so I'll get like a little flake off, and then a little flake off, and then a little flake, and a little flake, and a little flake. And so like all of my kendamas look like this. Like when you
Holy
look,
shit.
it's the same thing here with this one. Like there's like these little flakes come off, but there's no like big chips off. Like you'll see. Back when I did uh back when I was learning kendama and I would do insta lighthouse flips, I would get chips like this.
Yeah.
That's the chip that you're more
And
familiar
to
with.
be honest, mine happened when I drove it on cement.
Yeah, well, so the taps will weaken the wood, but like ultimately this happens because you're going like that, like you're going
Mm.
out with it. So I think that why people
Oh.
think that taps chip kendamas is because the taps will weaken it to the point where even one insta lighthouse flip will just finish it and it'll take that whole chunk off. But if you do literally 0 insta lighthouse flips, which is what I do, 0, never, not even a single one ever in an entire session. When I sesh for 2 hours, I will go months without ever doing a single insta lighthouse flip. It'll chip off like that, but it doesn't actually chip off in a big piece, and you can keep on tapping it. And
Yeah.
so you can ask Gino or any of the 608 people. I'm known in the 608 for playing my kendamas for an insanely long time. I play my damas for like a month and a half, 2 months, and they last that long when all I do all day is taps, which seems super counterintuitive, right? Because you're like, oh, you're tapping. Well, then you should just be destroying your kendama in like a week or so. Nope.
But when
I
you
play my
tap, is it
kendamas. I play
you
my
feel like
kendamas
it's
until they look like this, like, until they're absolutely beat.
when you see I see the chips, does that get in the way of the tapping? Like, is it the Ken gonna not be straight? Because
Not straight. That's not how it gets in the way. It gets in the way because it weakens the wood and I have to tap harder. So
okay,
I could still play this kendama, but I stopped because I wanted to go to a kendama that was bouncier. So it kind of like loses its bounce with the taps and it gets weaker. But that's just the thing is like this chip now I can't tap anymore
right,
because it's gonna like
yeah,
you know be
gotcha.
completely put off course by that chip. But this, like you can see, it's still sort of flat, you know? So when you get these
Yeah,
tiny little flakes off, like I said I do, it doesn't change the direction of the tap, so you can still tap. So I play my kendamas for a very, very long time, even though all I do all day is tap them. You know, tap warm up, tap cool down, taps during the sesh. All I do is taps.
yeah,
And I play my kendamas for super long.
okay, that's really cool. Um, how good are you with the string in comparison to how good you are without the string?
Um, I don't know. Uh, Battle at the Border last year and NIKO would be my only ways to tell because I never play with a string ever,
Okay,
ever. As soon as I get a kendama in the mail, I take off the serrato, I take the string out, I throw it away. I put it back. I super glue the Serato on immediately, 100% of the time. I haven't had a sesh with a string in about a year and a half since I started playing stringless. So,
You super glue your Serato on.
so that it
Um,
doesn't come off with the taps. Yeah, that's another thing with stringless. I never have to do this.
yeah, I hate doing that. I know super glue doesn't
Never,
work, but
never, ever, ever have to push my cups down. I get
what
my
kind of super
kendama
glue do you
and
use?
Gorilla Glue,
Is there a certain
and
kind?
I'll just go like this, couple dabs right here,
Yeah.
and then put it on quick. Do that once to make sure that it's all the way down to where it needs to be. Take it off, let it sit for a day, and I never have to worry about the cups coming off ever again.
Okay. Um, what's your is there a certain Dama that you find? Because I find between my Damas, like some are just naturally good at tapping, some aren't naturally good at tapping. Do you find like the weight or the way that it looks or anything to know if it's good or
I
bad
was
at tapping?
I was just talking with Dylan Marr about this, and the wood can be so variable. You know, you can get a maple that's 90 grams, and you can get a maple that's 70 grams, and you can get a maple that you can get two maples that are 90 grams and one can tap well and one won't, and you can get two maples that are 70 grams and one will tap well and one won't.
Yeah.
So I have never like I maybe it's because I haven't played enough kendamas, you know, like I've only been playing for 4 years. It's not like I've been playing for like 10 years. But I have not really found a correlation between weight and taps because I've had
Okay.
some lighter kendamas. I think for the most part, the heavier, the better it is for taps, the more
Okay.
bouncy it feels. But I know people who feel differently about that. I know people who say that lighter ones tap well. So I've never really found a solid correlation between those two things.
I wonder if it has to do with base cup hole or weighted Serato, like if the Serato weighs more.
I've also um I've also never played a non-base cup hole kendama
And then what about like
because
a heavy Serato? Like it's better for lunars, if that's better for taps?
I don't know. I've done the splice kendamas, you know, that have
Mm.
like the sweet splice because I only play amp kendamas. That's the only kendama I play anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like I've kind of zoned in on exactly what shape is perfect for my play style, and it's the amp shape. And the splice amps sometimes do feel a little bit better for taps, maybe because there's weight in the Serato, but I don't know. I'd have to do a more detailed analysis of that, like weigh things out and then play with it for a week and stuff like that. And I haven't done that. I don't know about the weighted Serato. It makes sense that it's well, no, because I feel like with taps, you would probably want more weight away from the center axis of rotation because then you have more torque to be swinging it back
I
and
see.
forth.
Yeah. But
But I don't know.
I've
Like I said, I've never
personally
done.
I've looked at it and it just seems like some are bad and some are good. Even some Damas I have that are have like looser Seratos, like I thought maybe like a super tight Serato. I think that generally does help, but it's not like lunar balance where it's really easy to see if a Damas get a lunar just based on weighing the
Yeah,
Serato.
yeah. It's really about the wood. Like it's really about what maple you get. It
What kind
seems
of
like. Oh, go ahead.
what kind of wood do you use? Do you like maple the best or beech or
Maple. Yeah, maple.
okay.
I like ash, but when I pick up an ash setup, I completely change my play style. So I have done no taps since my third to last post, the 4321 spike taps and reg taps. I had a maple Ken there, and then after that, I set up an ash Ken, and I haven't done any taps since then. So only stalls. So I
Okay.
only do stilts, stalls, you know, trip whirl wings, trip stilt trays. I've landed a lot of trip stilt trays now, like probably like 15 now,
Okay.
which
Yeah, you
is
landed
that's a
five
really
at
fun trick to do
battle.
with Ash. What?
Yeah. You landed like five at battle, and then you did the 1, 2, 3 still tray, and then you landed 15, I guess, since
Yeah, yeah. That trick is a really fun trick to play with Ash. So like specifically, I get an Ash setup, and I'll do those tricks because you know it's like specially designed for that. especially designed for stalls, having that just little bit of friction makes
Yeah.
all the difference.
In the grain. Yeah.
Yeah, and with spike taps, I've been doing spike taps with ash
Okay.
because I don't think that will chip the base cup.
Right.
At least it
Um,
hasn't in my experience so far.
okay. And that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I think we got off course from how good you are with a string. So you mentioned the two competitions. How'd you do in NAKO and battle?
MKO, Zach took me out. He's a guy. It was so funny because at Battle at the Border 2022, I got top 8, which was like amazing. Like I felt so like I was so geeked about it. I definitely just got lucky with my pairings, and which you kind of have to do. Got lucky with my trick pulls, especially got lucky with my trick pulls against Nick because I got like this was well, I do a bunch of candlesticks. I used to do a bunch of stunt plane stuff, so I have really good like stunt plane intuition. I don't really do it much anymore. But then I go up against Nick and I pull up the candlestick trick and the one turn stunt fast trick. And then I think I ended him on some like stupid like opposite hand whirlwind or something like that. And so I got really lucky with the trick pulls. But at NAKO, I went up against Zach and just got torched. The first trick that we pulled was spacewalk to bird, and that's so far out of my league. I
Oh,
just was
okay.
not
Yeah.
even close. So I had no chance of getting that. And then obviously Zach is amazing. Um, so I did decent at those, but the kendama tricks that you do for open are nothing like the tricks that I practice, like it's a totally different style. And actually after this last Battle at the Border where I chose not to compete just because I wanted to hang out with people and have a good time, I actually kind of missed that. I actually found that it's actually pretty fun to practice those types of tricks, like the open style tricks. And so I probably will compete from now on. So I'll probably have to set up a strong dama at some point because I don't have it. I know, L.
Yikes.
um, but I thought that it was fun. But like I said, like I don't know how good I am with a string. Like I haven't like trip or 1 2 3 stilt tray. Like I've never tried that with a string on.
Yeah.
So I probably never will. So
Again, we didn't really get off topic, but I wanted to go back to string versus stringless. Um, and again, not that there was like this big debate or argument. I know you mentioned that too, that we both feel, and you especially feel that you should be able to play kendama however you want to play, right?
100%.
Okay. But when I was recommending people try stringless, it feels like I can kind of see somebody would say, well, you're just making it easier. It's kind of like a wimpy type thing to just like, oh, let's make it easier. Kendama is hard, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to compare that to at one point, people play kendama with a short string. And when people play kendama long string, people didn't like it, right? Chris, have you heard the story about Chris Bosch's edit? So
Mm-mm.
he was playing, this is like 2014. He did this really crazy mind-blowing edit. I think it was Chris Bosch, I'm almost positive. But if it's not, I'm sorry. But he did this mind-blowing edit with like a 5-finger string. And somebody called him out, I think on
And that was
FKC.
a lot. That was a long string.
That was a long string.
Oh.
And so then he did the edit again. But in the beginning of the edit, he did the exact same tricks, but then he was like, check it out. This is a 2-finger string. And then he did the
Are you
exact same
serious?
thing.
What
And
a
it was like,
baller.
and
That's
I think like
funny.
all the OGs would be like, oh, you didn't know that, like that was like the best, coolest video, and it was past my time too. It was before my time too, but I remember hearing about that. But I want to point that out. So people really didn't like a 5-finger string back then. People also didn't like any kind of paint. It was against tradition. And I feel like this general thing
Oh,
about
really?
yeah, dude. paint. Again, it was before my time, so I can't really accurately say how people felt about it. But from what I've heard of people saying it in person and then podcasts and stuff, like adding sticky paint was like, there were definitely like traditionalists, I guess. But people are just saying, yeah, it's just going to be easier. Like, let's just stick to what was harder, right?
Mhm.
Is removing the string a natural progression? Do you think it's more than that? Do you think it's different? What do you think?
Well, like I said, when juggling came into kendama, because I remember talking with Brandon Meyer at Sakura Chicago, and we were talking about stringless, and he was like, "Well, yeah, because when I started, like this was considered juggling, like going like that, like people called that juggling."
Yeah.
And so when when people actually started juggling a kendama, it totally changed the game, right? Like, and I'm not even saying the game like the meta, like I'm saying the game like the game kendama, like the skill toy itself was being used in completely fundamentally different ways.
Yeah.
And so when I think about like how things like that, and then even the long string, sort of changed the game because now more things are possible. Well, I guess maybe technically everything that's possible with a 10 finger or a 14 finger string is possible with a 3 finger string. I don't know. Tibby did late 12 Ken flip. I don't know if that would be possible on a 3 finger string. Like actually like legitimately even possible at all. I don't know about that. But I just know that it's constantly changing. And like I said, this is all like really complex, nuanced issues talking about like what exactly do you mean by challenge? What exactly do you mean by integral? What exactly do you mean by kendama? Um, Playing stringless, it seems like to me it's the natural progression, where it's like because when I see the string and I hear people say like, oh, the string got in the way of my trick, and so then you're subconsciously admitting that the string is not part of your trick. The string is not part of your kendama, it's just getting in the way of your kendama. When I see that, I think, okay, well, then why do we have the string in the first place? It's because back when people were bad and this was considered juggling, and I don't even want to say bad, that was maybe a
Yeah.
little inflammatory, but um, back when people were like
Normies.
that, like you had to worry about dropping it all the time, like when people were doing like single J sticks and that was a banger, like you had to worry about missing that 99% of the time. Well, now if you take a string off, people can land things 99% of the time, So the string was really just for not dropping it on the ground. Well, now that we have juggling, the string is sort of obsolete now. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah.
It's like that seems like the natural progression to me. And I think that what helped me come to that conclusion was not being so involved with other people. Like I said, like the first like year and a half of me playing kendama, I didn't play with anyone. Like I just played by myself. I like would post Instagram clips, but I gave myself like a 5 minute Instagram screen time limit so that because I'd never I
Five
didn't
minutes.
like yeah I was like I'll go on to like maybe post something once a day and like maybe check it for a little bit, but I don't like social media, so I didn't want to be the guy just like scrolling. So I didn't really have all of these other perspectives of these other people to think like, oh, okay, well, this is what everyone else is doing, so I better do it the same way. I didn't have that, and I even had the opposite of that. So shout out to Elliot Gore, who is a player in Madison, who has been playing kendama for like 6 years now, is completely devoid of the community. He is not like he is by himself. Like he is like me, like playing out in the woods shirtless, like, and he plays stringless. And so even because the way he does kendama is he'll do like cup flow, so he'll do a lot of like flipping like that where it's like corking and stuff. And so he was like, oh, why would I have the string on? Like that seems silly, why would I keep the string on? And he didn't have any other Instagram people to look at and see like, oh wait, everyone keeps the string on, huh? Maybe I should keep the string on. He didn't have that at all. And so like 0 is a special number. If you're doing kendama with a string and there is no one else playing stringless, you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to keep the string on. I'm not going to take the string off. That would be silly. That's not what anyone else is doing. But if you even have one person who is playing stringless, which I did, that's just that little bit more motivation to question it and be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, why do I play with this string? Why would I play with this thing when it's so frustrating and it makes me hate kendama?
So, okay, well, yeah, a lot of questions pop in my head. I guess is the challenge of being an interviewer. But I want to talk about Elliot because that's really fascinating. But going back, so let me know if I get this right. Kendama, the community, and the reason most people play Kendama is to do cool tricks. But 2012, the string got, or sorry, 2012, we put paint on our damas because people started doing lighthouse and lunar tricks, and people wanted to do triple lunar flip, triple lighthouse stuff. 2013, the string got a little longer because we wanted to do bigger whirlwinds. 2015, 2016, the string got even longer because people wanted to do longer juggling tapping lines, new gen style. 2019, 2020, the cups got bigger, the whole shape got bigger. I guess maybe that was before with Crom. These years aren't like totally accurate. So to make Dama easier, in lack of a better term, and natural progression,
yeah.
2023, string is gone, so we can do the tricks that we want to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the part. That's why I think that little like it's all, you can almost consider it like a Freudian slip when you say the string got in the way, because it's like, okay, well, if you're saying that, then subconsciously that the string is not integral to what you're trying to do. It's just hindering what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is something with the ken and the tama. So that means that those are the two fundamental pieces, not the string, not the kendama, not the ken, the tama, and the string.
But I want to do a crazy trick to Bird, and Bird keeps slipping off. So why don't I just put some wax or glue right here and in the bevel so it makes sure it sticks on?
Like put glue on your tama?
Yeah, I mean, this is like devil's advocate, but
Like put Velcro on your tama?
no, like wax, like beeswax. I think that I haven't tried it, but maybe that would make it stickier, right? Like I'm just trying to like devil's advocate.
Well, Soul did painted cups.
Yeah.
Why don't we just paint the whole kendama?
Well, why don't we make it just flat right here and have two little lines so whenever you do a bird, it just sticks.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with that?
I don't know. Define okay. Would I think that is just as impressive as not having that? No.
Right.
Would I think that would be okay for a competition? No. Do I think that if you want to make your own kendama and do that, yeah, go for it. Am I gonna be able to compare that to other tricks landed? No, just like I don't compare my stringless tricks
Yeah.
to people with a string.
Okay. So yeah,
So
they're consistent. Right?
I that is an interesting question though, and I do like to be like challenged on that stuff because I want to make sure that what I think is, something I truly believe. And I think that is okay if you want to, but all of the things about how I feel about stringless apply, where
Yeah.
I wouldn't compare those two. It's like a totally different game now. Now you're changing it. So like that's interesting though, because like would I consider kendama with a 3-finger string to be a different game than kendama with a 10-finger string? Like I said, like here's your standard competition kendama. Here's the oversized kendama that the Japanese players will do juggling tricks with. I'm somewhere in the middle. Is 3-finger string right here, 10-finger string right here, and stringless right here? I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I would I see. I would still consider a 3 finger string and a 10 finger string to be the same game. You know, not
Yeah,
like how I consider stringless and strung. Like I consider those to be two different games. I would still consider 3 finger string and 10 finger string to be the same game. But when I think about it, it seems like it would be more like, well, it's more towards the stringless side. So I
yeah,
don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about. I don't have all the answers, you know?
yeah. Right. You're exploring just like the rest of us are.
Hmm. Right.
Um,
I'm just doing what's fun and what's more conducive to my specific play style, which is consistency.
yeah. Um, so back to Elliot Gore. Who is he? I've never heard of him before.
Yeah,
When
no
did he
one,
start
no
playing?
one had. He doesn't do. He did like staffing, like bow staffing. So he does like flow arts, you know.
Yeah.
And then he found kendama as a sort of a way to do that. If you watch, he has an Instagram actually, and it's just Elliot Gore. And if you watch his play style, it's unlike anything you've ever seen.
Okay.
I almost guarantee it. You know, do you remember Smashmo?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll do like really interesting cup flows. Um,
Wait.
Elliot,
Yeah. That's Russ's favorite player. You know
yeah,
the teammate Russ. He does a lot of that
303
stuff.
me again. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I met him at the border.
Yeah.
I would love to see what Russ would think about Elliot Gore because, like I said, his play style is unlike anything you've ever seen. And what's really interesting is that since playing with me, his play style has evolved even more yet. So now he'll do cup flow and then flip it to lighthouse and then go to airplane, which is something he never did. He didn't even think about that.
What's his username?
Elliot Gore,
G.
1L.
Yeah.
Did you find it? I just DM'd you his most recent post. If you know. But so now he'll do like now he's practiced like a tap to airplane and stuff like that. And so if you watch
Whoa.
his play style, it's unlike anything you've ever seen. So I had him to sort of like influence me, and he was like he is like how I was saying, like here's competition kendama and here's the performance kendama, and it's sort of a spectrum. Like in terms of a spectrum of play styles, like here's most people's play style, here's mine, how I'm kind of like branching out with stringless. And then like he's way over here. Like he is in his own zone. He
That's so
does what
cool.
he
It's so
wants.
inspiring, you know?
It was very inspiring for me, 100%. Because we would always pull up to the session back when I would play with a string, he would come stringless and I would do stuff with a string and he could appreciate it. And I would love using some of his stringless damas and doing cup flow. But it took me a while before I realized, like, well, I can take the string off and do the same tricks that I want to do. Just because I take the string off doesn't mean I have to emulate his play style. But it took me a while to figure that out, which is why I'm not expecting stringless to just like catch on and become the future. Like it's going to take a while for people to figure out that they can still do the tricks that they like, but do them stringless.
Yeah.
But like I said, like future of kendama, if it's not stringless, it's at the very least bringing one strung and one unstrung setup to the sesh. I would love to see that.
What I prefer is to bring the strung setup, and then when I get mad at the string, I just rip it.
And then there's no going back, and that's ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Elliot, for this conversation. I think that your honesty, your openness, you're friendly, and you're not pushing this on anybody. And I love the way that you play kendama. It's inspiring, but it's also super cool to see, like,
Thank you.
how you're very inspiring because the way that you look at kendama of consistency and
Mhm.
stuff. And so
Yeah.
it's
Thank
great to
you.
have you in the community. And we'll definitely talk more. And I know for
Yeah.
today, I have Monday off tomorrow, and I'm so excited to go play some stringless dama.
Let's go. I'll
All
be
right.
session stringless too.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good, man.
Nice talking with you, Isaac. See ya.
All right. See ya.